Thank you for tuning into the Invest Jacksonville Leadership Summit. You're about to watch panel number 2, Unlocking Value, exploring the untapped potential of Jacksonville's neighborhoods. Be sure to like and follow for more content from today's top business and thought leaders. Enjoy.
Oh, yeah, it's good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Thompson, and I'm excited to hear the panelists today. We're really focusing on the growth, the possibility of where Jacksonville and its communities are going to be heading, and unlocking its value. And we have a diverse group here that can talk through that with us with some specific questions, pointing them in a direction there. So again, it's all about activating the maybe underserved or underdeveloped communities that we're focusing on here. As we just saw and heard about the opportunities, people coming here, we're going to need other growth in the residential side, multifamily growth as well too. So we're really excited to go with this. So first question. And this is going to be for all of you. So Brittany, I'll go with you first here as well. Okay. Since you're in the middle. So what are the unique characteristics and assets of Jacksonville's various neighborhoods, and how can they be leveraged for economic and community development, which would in essence revitalize Jackson's historic communities?
Well, I moved to Jacksonville about 20 years ago. And what I've always said about Jacksonville is you can have whatever type of life you want in Jacksonville. If you want the rural community living out in the country, you're about 15, 20 minutes away from getting into a major city. You can live at the beach and watch the sunrise over the Atlantic Ocean every morning. You could live in the urban core and live in a high rise and walk to work every day. You can really have any type of life that you want here in Jacksonville. And I think that each of the neighborhoods has such a diverse we have so many diverse neighborhoods, and each one has such a specific identity. I think that people could really turn around and invest within those neighborhoods and drive up the population just from having the pride and sense. One of the things that Dr. Moes had said is 70% of the people that go to UNF stay within the Northeast Florida region. And I think that's indicative of the community that we've built and that we're continuing to grow. So one of those things that I think that the local businesses can do is continue to reinvest in Jacksonville and through the support of the city of Jacksonville and the government as well, to be able to provide those types of identities in those neighborhoods and allow us to continue to thrive.
Great. Matt, any thoughts on that?
Sure, absolutely. So a couple of examples of what you're talking about is if you look at what Tony Cho has done with the Phoenix Innovation and Arts District, in the neighborhood of Springfield. Springfield is an old single-family neighborhood in downtown Jacksonville, where residents have been reinvesting in their homes for years now. They're doing a great job. Well, here comes a developer out of Miami that has more of an altruistic approach to development and patient capital, which is what's needed in this particular development. He takes old tobacco warehouses and turns them into community spaces, into cultural spaces, where you have business incubators, where you have small office spaces, you have event venues for maybe a wedding or community events. He brings in artists and does murals on the exterior of his walls. He's extremely open in that, and he has patient capital versus, a lot of developers are coming in looking for a quick ROI because that's how they finance. Well, he has patient capital and he can contribute kind of organically to the culture, and I think it's fantastic. And it's a perfect example of the types of development we're looking for. And another example would be the Union Terminal Warehouse, which is on Union Street, kind of the southern side of Springfield. And they've redone this warehouse into 220 multifamily units. They have small office space and retail as well. So those are two perfect examples of the types of redevelopment that every community needs.
Great assets being put back to use there, yes. Nasreen, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, to anchor on what Brittany said, there's so many different diverse neighborhoods in Jacksonville, each with their own unique assets. But I think as far as strategies for revitalization, you're going to see that most of the strategies are going to be anchored around a few common things. Some of the neighborhoods have their nuances, but the first panel already alluded to the infrastructure. So that's a huge strategy, is making these neighborhoods accessible. It's going to make doing business in those neighborhoods easier when it's more accessible. The other thing is historic preservation. That's a very, very common theme across neighborhoods in Jacksonville. Repurposing historic buildings for mixed use. For example, taking an older building that maybe was a home and repurposing it for a retail space. Finding creative ways, like Matt said, to repurpose. We know historically, construction was more durable back then. So that's creating sustainability in construction. It's looking after the environment. The other thing that you're going to see as a common theme is affordable housing. That's a hot topic, a hot strategy, is building out affordable housing that not only has the living spaces, but also has mixed use. So has retail spaces, office spaces, really building a community that's close-knit so that everything is accessible for the local residents. Waterfront space is another strategy. Many of the neighborhoods are waterfront access or waterfront facing, whether it's the river or the beaches. So you're going to see a lot of revitalization that's centered around filling those spaces for entertainment, cultural, retail, livability. And then the last one is small business incubators, like Matt mentioned, supporting local business and insulating ourselves here in Jacksonville against conglomerates, big chain, supporting local business by having incubator programs. I believe UNF, our host, has an incubator program downtown that's also partnered with the business strategy department here at UNF. So things like that. We're providing mentorship for small businesses. And those are the 5 themes you're going to see. And I could definitely go through like all the different neighborhoods and talk about the different nuances, but everything is going to be anchored around that.
I'm going to stay with you, Nasreen. Let me throw this one at you.
Oh boy.
How can public-private partnerships be utilized to revitalize underdeveloped areas within Jacksonville? And what successful models can we look for guidance in balancing growth while maintaining a unique identity, which I think is important?
Sure. I'd like to tie the response to that to the 5 things I mentioned before. Okay, so let's start. I can't remember what order I said it in. Let's talk about infrastructure and transportation and building out roadways. So a successful model we have is that Bright Line Southern expansion, that rapid train that was developed by a combination of public and private funding. That is a definite model for us. I know the first panelist talked about the rapid transit here. There's also the Jacksonville Skyway, creating opportunities for public, for private investors to partner with the city to help build out infrastructure is definitely one, and the Bright Line is a model for that. As far as historic preservation, the city does have grants and tax incentives for encouraging reuse and preservation of historic sites. And a big success story right here downtown is the Barnett Building, which is where UNF has the Center for Entrepreneurship that I was talking about before. But that Barnett Building was modeled, I believe, on floors 8 to 18. There are 107 apartments of all different floor plans. They have a rooftop bar and a parking garage, and it's been totally rehabbed with retail spaces. And as a result of that, the Trio building diagonally across the street has just been bought up by, I believe it's called Southern something developers. They have $180 million plan for rehabbing that property. It's built out. It's a Marriott Bonvoy hotel. They're going to have a very high-end restaurant. They're keeping the name of the restaurant secret. It's like a Southern upscale restaurant, a 6,500 square foot bodega. They're going to be building out 169 apartments. So as a result of the Barnett Building rehab, it has attracted more investment for historical preservation. We talk about waterfront spaces. We are in no shortage of waterfront spaces here in Jacksonville. We don't have an example here locally, but a successful model for that, I believe, is in Washington. There's a DC wharf where public and private came together and built out businesses, made it a cultural experience, like was mentioned in the first panel. Arts and culture built out, attracting local businesses, making it a destination. As far as business, we already have business incubator programs here, attracting, helping to mentor startups. So that partnership, if the city can provide more funding for startups, is definitely a way to partner to help. So I'll stop there.
Very good. Thank you, Brittany. Your thoughts on public-private partnerships utilized to help revitalize and redevelop?
So my view on public-private partnerships is a little different. I've gone to many seminars where they talk about the P3 or however they refer to it. And the way that I feel like that the public-private partnership really kind of would flourish, at least in what I do. I'm a commercial contractor by trade. I get to see a lot of businesses and a lot of entrepreneurs come very early on into a project and watch things die on the vine because things aren't necessarily the easiest way to get things done. I feel like there could be more of a public-private partnership, not necessarily in the incentives. Sure, we see the incentives. In fact, whenever we bought our property downtown, we tried to go after some of the incentives, and really wasn't really the easiest thing in the world. But my thought is more just, what can the city of Jacksonville do to partner with the local homegrown citizens who are here to create their business, watch their dream thrive in these historic buildings, and be able to reuse the infrastructure that we already have here? What can we do to make their lives easier? What can we do to make business in Jacksonville be easier from a construction standpoint? Because obviously they're going into a facility, they're going into a space. These guys are small to medium-sized companies. They're not the large conglomerates that are coming in. They're getting the really good deals, and I'm glad they're here. They're helping our overall community. But we also need to look at our local residents. What can we do to help them thrive? What can we do to help them make sure that their vision is viable and their dreams are viable as well? So from a partnership standpoint, that's the way I take that. I mean, we all know that the generic, public-private partnership. My main thing is, what can the city of Jacksonville do for its residents to be able to live out their dreams and continue to thrive and continue to have their children and their children's children continue to devote back to their neighborhoods?
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Matt. What role does culture and historic preservation play in neighborhood developments, and how can their efforts be supported and scaled for greater impact?
Well, local culture is extremely important because it creates an identity for a local community. So from a support standpoint, whether that be festivals, whether that be centers that focus on the history of the area, it could be a scalable situation like Mosh, right? Mosh is going to be under construction soon. It's going to be an amazing, architecturally significant Science and History Museum, which is going to be in the Sports and Entertainment District. It could be the Naval Museum, which is a decommissioned military Navy boat where you can get on and you can look at basically paying respects to our military here in Jacksonville, which is significant. Or it can be a smaller situation that maybe is not so scalable, but you look at what Jacoby Pittman has done with the Clara White Mission that she's been running for 30 years. She serves meals to people in need every day of the week. And not only is she doing that, but she's taking some of those people, and when they're ready, she starts to train them in the culinary arts. Learn about budgeting, learn about planning, learn about serving and running a kitchen is extremely important. Many people might not think that that's significant. Actually, it's extremely significant. So all of those things play a role, whether they're scalable or whether they're a little bit smaller level.
Sure. Great. Anything to add on that, on the cultural, historical preservation playing in this?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't say more. I will wholeheartedly believe in being able to reuse the things that we have. Over the past 50 years, the red light district. There's buildings that in Jacksonville's history that people weren't necessarily proud of. So instead of doing something with them, they were demoed, they were razed for whatever reason. We can't just wipe out our history. We really need to take the opportunity to preserve the things that we have and improve them for the future. Not necessarily languish on what exactly they were used for, but there's a lot of the downtown that is not there anymore. And they're beautiful buildings and they do have cultural significance to who we are as a city. And tearing things down simply for the sake of either whether it be a reputation or even if it's just construction, we can fix that. We don't need to get rid of those things because they are part of our history. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, we need to be able to reflect back on that and have that identity and not just be a brand new community every time we turn around and got a brand new building.
Great. All right, Nasreen, this is specifically for you, okay? From an investment perspective, what strategies have proven most effective in identifying and capitalizing on undervalued properties within Jacksonville neighborhoods? What are some examples of such successes of these investments?
Big questions, like 3 parts. So strategies for identifying undervalued properties. So you need to do your market analysis, of course, market analysis on the area you want to invest. Things like home appreciation and infrastructure and business growth and flow and population, things like that. And then when you identify a property, and I'll talk about the acquisition in a bit, but once you identify a property, you want to have the tools to be able to analyze the property and the metrics and identify that it is actually, in fact, a good deal. Things like price to rent ratio or appreciation specifically for that property, running comps and such. So the question is identifying and doing, okay, so as far as acquiring undervalued property, so if you want to acquire an undervalued property, you are likely wanting to go away from the MLS because MLS really is representing market value properties. So the old boots on the ground driving for dollars is not for everyone. The alternative to that is direct mail marketing. I'm sure we've all received cards in the mail of people wanting to buy our homes. Networking, showing up at networking events and finding off-market deals. So the key is finding off-market deals. What has worked for me has been partnering with wholesalers. So with wholesalers, I'm not going to get the same deal that I'm going to get as if I drove and found the property and spoke to the owner myself. But I'm going to pay a little bit of an assignment fee to the wholesaler. It's still going to be a deal from the MLS. So that's as far as identifying and acquiring undervalued properties. Capitalizing, we know, you want to rehab. If you're going to get off-market properties, they're likely going to be distressed because that's where your value comes in, is in the rehab that you're going to do. So with those of us in construction and rehab, your biggest return usually comes from the kitchen rehab, from the landscaping rehab. You want to find out what are the things you can do to add value and capitalize on your investment. And then you want to decide what your exit strategy is. I think the second part of the question is the examples of successful strategies that have worked. So here we talked about the Springfield area. And if you look in Springfield, it's, I believe, one of Jacksonville's oldest neighborhoods. And there's a lot of repurposing of historic buildings there that investors like you and me and have used tax incentives to go in and rehab a historic property. And as a result, we've seen property values growing. So Springfield is I would say, an emerging area for that. The Barnett building that I talked so much about, that to me is a successful model of acquiring a distressed property and adding value and seeing the success of it. Murray Hill and Riverside, I really like this area. So when you look at the preservation of old buildings, the 2 examples I think of is that Bold Bean coffee shop in Riverside. That building was built in the 1926, I think, and has been rehabbed and is now being used as a coffee shop, which I think is so cool. We also have the old schoolhouse being used as a fishware brewery, that was built in 1916. And they do yoga there, I've done yoga there, and it's such a cool environment. So I believe those are great models for success of strategies. And then you look at the Eastside neighborhood where they have successfully brought in affordable housing with mixed use. And what I was talking about, bringing the community close together, having that retail space and the office space all together. The success model, I think, for us here in Jacksonville is observing St. Augustine, who has embraced their history and brought in tourism that is based around their heritage and their culture and the history. And I think if we kind of keep that in mind, it's a great model also for success.
Excellent answer. Thank you. All right, Brittany, we're about revitalizing or taking old buildings. What about some innovative construction practices and sustainable building methods can be applied to revitalize Jacksonville's neighborhoods, ensuring economic mobility and community acceptance?
So one of the things that we like to do is we like to partner early on with an investor. We offer design build services in which we are contractors by trade. We're commercial contractors, but we partner with outside designers as well. And we like to walk buildings with potential investors initially because we know the code, we know the Jacksonville Municipal Code and some rules that most people probably wouldn't know existed. Some actually need to be eliminated. But what we'd like to do is we want to be their partners early on so we can walk these buildings, which from a sustainable practice, adaptive reuse, of course. So as we walk through them and we understand, okay, this building's going to need this building's going to need this, they don't get into a situation where they're either under contract to purchase or lease a property that cannot perform the way that they want to within the guidelines of the rules that we're required to follow. The Florida Building Code, the ADA, Jacksonville Municipal Code, and another one, the one Jacksonville Municipal Code that I would like to speak to is actually the 50% rule, which most people don't know. It, I'm sure, had its day where it made sense. It's really a detractor from underserved neighborhoods. It's a code in which it says that if you intend to improve a property by more than 50% of the building's assessed value from 3 years ago, then you need to update the site to 20% of the amount of work that you're doing. Well, that's not helpful to underserved communities whose building value is very low. Basically, if you change a light bulb in the building, you're going to have to update the site. So that's just not, there's certain things I think that we really need to reevaluate as we look to reinvesting in Jacksonville, adaptive reuse and the like. Those are the projects that are mostly targeted by that particular rule and by the Florida Building Code. Things haven't been updated. So we really need to take a partnership with the city of Jacksonville and make sure that we're doing right by the neighborhoods that need us the most.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Matt. What role does strategic planning play in your approach to developing projects that unlock the potential of Jacksonville's neighborhoods? And how do you ensure these developments meet market demands while serving community needs?
So I'll give you a specific example that hopefully would answer the question. So at Rise, we located a property here in town, not far from here, at the intersection of JTB and Hodges, and there was 50 acres there. And the entire area had been developed around this 50 acres, and every developer in town had been trying to get at this property for years. And for whatever reason, it didn't work, whether that be zoning or whether that be cost, etc. So from a strategic planning standpoint, we knew we couldn't do it by ourselves. So we were able to get with a local retail developer who had a great relationship with the family. And the retail developer needed a residential developer to come in and fill in where the retail developer was not going to use that property. So out of the 50 acres, the retail developer purchased the front 10, right along Hodges and redeveloping that area. Then we took part of our property and we sold that to a full-scale Embassy Suites hotel, which will start construction here pretty soon. But then we looked at the back and thought, well, what's the best way to approach this from an approval standpoint? What's the city of Jacksonville really going to approve? So we thought about the best way to do it from a resi standpoint was doing an active adult 55+ rental community. So we went forward with our plan and we're developing 308 units of 55 plus senior housing. 72 of those units are cottages that will surround the 7-acre lake with walking trails, other exterior amenities, and then we have the remaining units in 4-story flats buildings, which will contain a clubhouse, 10,000 square foot of amenities inside, etc. And then we have an additional 4 acres that we haven't decided what we're going to do with that yet or not. But the first 72 will open up in June and August of this year. The remaining will open up in 26. But from a strategic standpoint, you have to be strategic just to get the opportunity. And then strategic planning from a planning perspective, what are you going to do that's actually going to get approved? And then on top of all this, we did our financing in 2024. Well, many of you might know that the real estate financing world has been upside down for the last 2.5 years because interest rates just boomed and it sent values shockingly low. And all of the investors in the commercial real estate business, largely from an institutional perspective, have been on the sidelines. So we have to be very strategic on how we're going to build that capital stack. And so, for an example, instead of going through a typical construction lender, we went through an insurance company to provide construction financing. Instead of going to one institutional investor to provide all of the LP capital, we went to several. Plus, we had to probably invest a little bit more than what we generally do. So strategic planning just absolutely was throughout that entire development.
Very good. Very good. Last question. This is the easy one for all three of you. Nasreen, you get to go first. 10 years from now, when someone describes Jacksonville, what do you hope they will say?
Yeah, you say this is the easiest one, but it was the hardest one for me. I feel that what I want for Jacksonville are at odds with each other. I don't know if I can get all of it. I mean, I'd love to see ecotourism. I'd love to see historical tourism. I'd love for us to be a buzzing city, buildings, but, you know, lots of transportation, accessibility, and thriving businesses. But at the same time, I want the housing to remain affordable. And in my head, you probably notice I have answers written here in my cheat notes, but I didn't have an answer for this because in my head, excuse me, I can't reconcile those two things. I don't know how we insulate from becoming Miami or a city where we've priced our locals and our local community out of being able to afford a home. So, I mean, in short, I guess I'd say I'd love it to be a city where my kids, if they leave, they want to come back. That they love being in Jacksonville.
That's a great answer. You hear a lot of just about the pricing and the kids being able to buy houses one day. Some areas around Florida, it makes it tough, and hopefully that Northeast Florida does not do that. Brittany, your thoughts?
So Jacksonville's been in the spotlight a lot since the pandemic. Jacksonville's been on most every positive list that you can find, and it's so nice to have the spotlight on Jacksonville. I feel like Jacksonville's deserved that for years. I absolutely love the city of Jacksonville. I'm not from here. I'm not a native, but I live here and I've been here for a while. But one of the things that I've always, I go to the conferences and I go to seminars and, they're like, oh, well, if Jacksonville could do like Raleigh does, if Jacksonville could do like this, we're always looking to another city. In 10 years, I would love for Jacksonville to be the case study. I would love for Jacksonville to be hey, follow what Jacksonville did, take their lead. I want to be the case study for what other cities want to mirror themselves like. We're in the spotlight right now. We have the opportunity to do so much. And I really hope that we all take advantage of this opportunity and we don't let it go to waste.
Great. Matt, you want to finish us out here?
Sure, absolutely. So in 10 years, we're going to have over 325,000 new residents in Jacksonville. We're growing at about a 32,000 a year clip. And just to give you an idea from a comparison perspective, you take another MSA of similar size, Cleveland, Ohio, they're growing about 13,000 a year. We're going at 32. And it's going to go up to 35. So it's a significant change in our population. And so in 10 years, when I look back, I want to recognize that Jacksonville downtown took bold steps to redevelop its downtown core, which is absolutely necessary. And as an example, they're bringing in an R1 research institution, right? Our research institutions, there's only about 148 of them in America out of 3,000 colleges and universities. In this particular case, they're bringing in the UF, and they're going to have a Florida Semiconductor Institute as well. They're going to have the city of Jacksonville has donated land and cash of over $127 million. The state is throwing in another $100 million, and you've got private donations well in excess of $50 million. That's bold. Those are the type of steps we need. We need them to focus on our medical community. We need them to continue to focus on UNF and help them on all the research and capabilities of what they're doing. So I want to see bold steps in downtown Jacksonville and look back on it that they did what they needed to do.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I was hopeful just for like maybe 5 Super Bowl championships by the Jaguars. So mine was a little easier. So that's where I'm on. But that's it for the panel. Please give them a round of applause. What a great job. Thank you.